Tell us how you've done that. Are there specific scientists or specific theories that you found especially compelling as you've educated yourself?
Let me tell you what I find compelling is what we've done in the state of Texas, using our ability to regulate our clean air. We cleaned up our air in the state of Texas more than any other state in the nation during the decade. Nitrous oxide levels down by 57%. Ozone levels down by 27%. That's the way you need to do it, not by some scientist somewhere saying, here is what we think is happening out there. The fact of the matter is the science is not settled on whether or not the climate change is being impacted by man to the point where we're going to put America's economics in jeopardy.
Governor, Congresswoman Bachmann, a question about energy. Back to that subject for a moment. Were you quoted correctly, and do you stand by it, as wanting to drill in the Everglades in Florida?
Well, the question was asked of me about that, and what I said is that we have American energy resources all across this nation, and of course we would do it responsibly. That was my response at the time. And on this issue of human activity as being the cause of climate change, I think it's important to note that the president recognized how devastating the EPA has been in their rulemaking, so much so that the president had to suspend current EPA rules that would have led to the shutting down of potentially 20% of all of America's coal plants. Coal is the source that brings 45% of America's electricity. What we're seeing is that a political agenda is being advanced instead of a scientific agenda, and this is leading to massive numbers of jobs being lost. The president told us he wanted to be like Spain when it came to green job creation, and yet Spain has one of the highest levels of unemployment. The president is bringing that here in the United States, and I think tomorrow night, when the nation tunes into the president, I'm afraid that we won't be seeing permanent solution. I'm afraid what we'll be seeing are temporary gimmicks and more of the same that he's given before.
Time. Speaker Gingrich, Chairman of the Federal Reserve Ben Bernanke will come to the end of his term in 2014. Would you reappoint Ben Bernanke?
I would fire him tomorrow.
Why?
I think he's been the most inflationary, dangerous, and power-centered chairman of the Fed in the history of the Fed. I think the Fed should be audited. I think the amount of money that he has shifted around in secret with no responsibility, no accountability, no transparency is absolutely antithetical to a free society. And I think his policies have deepened the depression, lengthened the problems, increased the cost of gasoline, and been a disaster. But I want to take the rest of my time, Brian, to go back to a question you asked that was very important. Because we were asked the wrong question at the last debate. The question isn't, would we favor a tax increase? The question is, how would we generate revenue? There are three good ways. The Ronald Reagan technique, put 3,700,000 more people back to work as of last Friday. You reduce government spending. You raise government revenues enormously. The Committee of 12 ought to be looking at how do you create more revenue, not how do you raise taxes. Second, you go to energy, exactly as Michelle Bachmann has said. You open up American energy, $500 billion a year here at home, enormous increase in federal revenue. Third, we own, with all due respect, Governor, we own 69% of Alaska. That's 1.5 Texases.
Yes, sir.
Now let's set a half Texas aside for national parks. We could liberate an area the size of Texas for minerals and other development. That would raise even more revenue, not the normal Washington viewpoint.
Mr. Speaker, time. Governor Romney, you often hear this figure, 47% of Americans pay no federal income tax, and the promised effort underway soon, at least in Washington, to correct that. Isn't some of this argument semantics, and won't the effort to correct that be a de facto tax increase?
You know, I must admit I have a bit of a hard time with the idea that there are people who don't feel like they're supporting our troops by contributing tax revenue through the income tax or through other tax vehicles. I don't want to raise taxes on the American people, but I think everybody ought to feel that they're part of this effort and that they're providing for our military, providing for our roads, providing for our schools. That ought to be part of whatever American experience is. But right now, the question is not the people that are not paying taxes at the low end. The question is not the people who are very, very rich. The question is, how about middle-income Americans? Who are the people most hurt by the Obama economy? And the answer is the middle class. The great majority of Americans are having a very, very difficult time. And our effort has to be to find ways to reduce the burden on those people. And that's why I proposed that anybody who's earning $200,000 a year and less ought to be able to save their money tax-free. No tax on interest, dividends, or capital gains. Let people save their money, invest in America, and not have to give more money to the government. The middle class needs our help.
Would Ben Bernanke have a job in your administration?
No, I'd be looking for somebody new. I think Ben Bernanke has overinflated the amount of currency that he's created. QE2 did not work. It did not get Americans back to work. It did not get the economy going again. We're still seeing declining numbers in prior quarter estimates as to what the growth would be. We're growing now at 1 to 1.5%. The plan I put forward just 2 days ago in Nevada will grow our economy at 4% per year for 4 years and add 11.5 million jobs. That's a very different approach than Ben Bernanke's taken, and it's a demonstrably different approach than Barack Obama has taken, and that's in part because we have very different life experiences.
Governor Perry, question about Texas. Your state has executed 234 death row inmates, more than any other governor in modern times. Have you struggled to sleep at night with the idea that any one of those might have been innocent?
No, sir, I've never struggled with that at all. The state of Texas has a very thoughtful, a very clear process in place of which when someone commits the most heinous of crimes against our citizens, they get a fair hearing, they go through an appellate process, they go up to the Supreme Court of the United States if that's required. But in the state of Texas, if you come into our state and you kill one of our children, you kill a police officer, you are involved with another crime and you kill one of our citizens, you will face the ultimate justice in the state of Texas, and that is you will be executed.
What do you make of What do you make of that dynamic just happened here? The mention of the execution of 234 people drew applause.
I think Americans understand justice. I think Americans are clearly, in the vast majority of cases, supportive of capital punishment. When you have committed heinous crimes against our citizens, and it's a state-by-state issue, but in the state of Texas, our citizens have made that decision, and they made it clear, and they don't want you to commit those crimes against our citizens, and if you do, you will face the ultimate justice.
Mr. Kane, I'd like to get you in this tax discussion we've had recently.
Yes.
The General Electric Corporation last year, there's a prominent case, made $14.2 billion in profits worldwide, but paid no U.S. taxes. Perfectly legal. But does it strike you as fair?
This is why I have proposed my 999 plan. The government needs to get out of the business of picking winners and losers. The government needs to get out of the business of trying to figure out who gets a tax break here, who gets a tax break there. When you go to 999, it levels the playing field for all businesses. What a novel idea. And the government won't be in the business of trying to determine who's going to be able to make money and pay no taxes and vice versa. Secondly, this recession is the worst recession since the Great Depression. If the recovery that this administration claims would just tie for last place, we would have another 6 million jobs. If it would tie for the recovery that took place in the 80s under President Reagan, we'd have 12 million more jobs out there, which would be music to the ears of the 14 million people looking for jobs. The president simply does not understand that the business sector is the engine for economic growth.
Congressman Paul, a long time ago, a fellow Texan of yours, a young student teacher in Cotulla, Texas, was horrified to see young kids coming into the classroom hungry, some of them with distended bellies because of hunger. He made a vow that if he ever had anything to do about it, the government would provide meals, hot meals at best, in schools. The young student teacher, of course, was later went on to be President Lyndon Johnson. Do you think that is any more providing nutrition at schools for children role of the federal government?
Well, I'm sure when he did that, he did it with local government, and there's no rules against that. That'd be fine. So that doesn't imply that you want to endorse the entire welfare state. You endorse all welfare. Anytime I challenge it, you're going to challenge the whole welfare system. No, it isn't authorized in the Constitution for us to run a welfare state, and it doesn't work. All it's filled up with mandates, and the mandates are what we're objecting to. I want to repeal all the mandates, but yes, if there are poor people in Texas, we have a responsibility. I'd like to see it voluntary as possible, but under our Constitution, our states have that right. If they feel the obligation, they have a perfect right to. So don't always try to turn around and say that we who believe in liberty, we lack compassion. Because we who believe in liberty and understand the market, we're the only ones that really understand how people are taken care of, how they are fed, and how people have jobs. It's the market. It's never the government that does it. So this whole idea that there's something wrong with people who don't lavish out free stuff from the federal government somehow aren't compassionate enough. I resist those accusations.
Congressman, thank you. Somewhat hard to believe. The campaigns have notified us we're actually a few minutes over the time we were allotted for tonight, and so our questioning will have to come to an end. With hearty thanks to so many people, most notably the candidates here on stage, but to the good folks here at the Reagan Library, the Reagan Foundation, notably Mrs. Reagan, to our partners in all of this, Politico, my partner in the questioning, John here, thank you very much. Terrific. And thank you all for watching. Our coverage will continue. One of the few things you can count on, we'll be back at this. There'll be many more of these discussions. That wraps up our live coverage of this portion of the debate from Southern California.